Good morning, Cathedral. I'm Jake Langdon.
And I'm Brooke Wood.
And welcome to another episode of Views from the Hill. We have a special guest with us today. The one, the only, Mr. Matt Kennedy. Say hi to everyone, Matt.
Hi to everyone, Matt.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to say,
Go ahead.
Mr. Kennedy actually graduated from Roncalli, not
Accurate.
Cathedral.
We have Matt on line 1.
2009.
Matt, what's your take?
That's an accurate statement. I graduated from that school in the South Side.
Is that
2009.
embarrassing for you?
No, not really. But I did. I mean, it's a fact of history. But I now bleed blue and gold.
Okay. Since 2015, he's been
2015.
teaching here.
Mr. Kennedy, what do you do here?
My primary function is to teach theology in the religion department. That's my primary function. So I've taught sophomores, juniors, and seniors over the course of 6 years. I do AV stuff on campus. So when we have events and whatnot, I do like projectors and microphones and all that fun stuff. Help coach football, freshman, defensive line. And then I also run the Theology Philosophy Club because I'm a nerd on top of everything else.
Sometimes you sing.
I do sing often, mostly at my parish, Cantor at Mass.
Where's your parish?
Our Lady of Lourdes in Irvington, over
Can
on the
we
east
catch you
side.
there sometime?
Oh yeah. I'm the lector this weekend actually. So I usually serve though. Serving's my big thing. I'm an MC, Master of Ceremonies. Yeah.
Must be an honor.
Oh, it's fun.
Who's your favorite student, Mr. Kennedy?
Of all time,
Who do you like better, me or Jake?
Right now.
right now,
All the time. Who's your favorite?
Forever.
Right now.
I'll tell you when you graduate.
Right now. Because the other person will have to leave.
So what I can tell you though, I can mention. Can I say like a favorite student, not my favorite overall, but a favorite student who has already graduated. That way, there's no competition. Yeah. Okay.
Megan Matei.
She's one of them. Yeah, Megan Matei is awesome. Lizzie Jensen, Emily Clack. Class 2018, I was pretty tight with. So, old Tommy.
Yeah.
Old Tommy Wood.
Old Tommy Wood.
Old Tommy.
I bet he's not listening, but
it's
if you
probably not.
are, what's up?
We're better without you, Tommy.
Yeah, we are.
I mean, all things improve over time.
Yeah.
Except for next year when this podcast
Well,
isn't with us.
it's gonna fizzle, but
It's what?
fizzle. You know, like fizzle and burn. You ever heard that statement?
Come on, you're a senior.
Come on. Okay, Mr. Kennedy, what is some advice you would give to your high school self?
To my high school self, keep doing what you're doing. Maybe study a bit more. I was a terrible student. Like, absolutely awful. So, for anyone listening who's a perfectionist, tone it down a little bit, but also work harder than I did. I was an awful student. So, do homework on time, turn it in. That'd be great. I would tell myself that because I was just a bad student. Master of procrastination and excuses.
You made it through.
I did. Now they trust me to teach you,
Wow.
which is a serious lapse in judgment.
Did they look at your transcript?
I hope not. High school or college.
Where'd you go to college, Marion?
I went to Marion over on the west side. So I've been like local Catholic schools my whole life.
And didn't you go to seminary school?
I was in seminary for about 3 months.
Can you take us through your experience from high school to college and kind of just a brief summary of your life?
Yeah, so like how that kind of all led to here.
Yeah.
Grew up a cradle Catholic family, big Irish Catholic family on the east side. I grew up on the south side because that's where my dad moved before I was born with my mom. And, you know, we just did the normal Catholic stuff. Mass on Sunday, pray before meals, nothing really else. I would say that for all the way up until senior year of high school, I was what I would call an apatheist. So, like, I didn't really care about God. That wasn't a thing that I wanted to do. And then senior retreat happened, and that just changed everything for me. I was going to be a sports journalist and broadcaster.
Really disappointing that you changed.
I know.
How did you turn away from something like that?
Well, there's this guy named Jesus. He's pretty cool.
You betrayed me, Mr. King.
I know. We could have been colleagues. I could have been the one bringing you into ESPN, But then, senior retreat just changed things, and I decided to go to Marian and study theology. So this was November of my senior year. My parents were stunned because the very following week, after I'd already been accepted into Ball State, I was going to know what I was going to do, decided to go to Marian and study theology instead. So over the course of that time, got really close-knit with a lot of people there, great community of people who helped me pray and discern as to what I needed to do. Hopped into seminary for a second. The Lord called me out of it almost immediately, which was great. Father Pat Beidelman was awesome to me during that time and kind of facilitating that, helping me figure that out. And then I graduated. Now I'm here. So there's a lot of details in there that I'm, for sake of brevity, but
what drew you to be a theology teacher? What was something that really drew you to that?
It's true. I think that in our society where everything's kind of left up for individual judgment, this is something that holds us accountable. And I know we don't like that typically, but y'all, we need that. we need a common truth that unites us and brings us together. And I have yet to find anything as uniting as, the truth of Christianity, specifically Catholicism, and that. So that was something that was really attractive to me. And you guys have both had me in class. I don't just do dry lecture information stuff. It's this is something that is inside. I can't keep out. I have to share it. And that's, there's so much truth behind it. It's reasonable. It's not just blind faith. I don't do blind faith stuff. It's entirely reasonable because I'm a skeptic by nature. So that's where I'm at. I think that's where I've kind of grown in that.
So you taught at Roncalli, right, for a little bit? Did you teach theology there? So how do you think it's different? Do you feel like you can kind of teach not your own thing, but kind of go off the grid a little bit and teach what you think has helped you personally?
Yeah, maybe how do you customize your own teaching style?
There's a principle in Paul's writing in the New Testament called the kerygma, which is basically, letting the Spirit work through you and sharing that. And you have to use your own personal history because I can tell you guys Anselm of Canterbury's ontological proofs for the existence of God. And you're already what is that? Right? And it would be totally unfulfilling if you don't already have a desire. Right? So I think part of my task and vocation is to present you with that and show you that, people see in this tradition all these rules and things like that. I'm free. I find joy in, there's joy and freedom in this. And if I can show you that, hey, you can do that, in the present day and be free from all this stuff and know that you're still going to struggle, but then there's going to be a community and, the sacraments, God physically manifested to you. Maybe you'll be interested in that. And maybe then we can have those conversations, then work our way to Anselm's ontological proofs for the existence of God, which is later down the line for me. So I feel like I'm not constrained to a test. My test is going to be when I die, hey, did you do all you could to get these kids to heaven? That's, and ultimately I think that's the question that every Catholic school has to ask. Is our goal to get you to college or heaven? Right? Which one's first? Mm-hmm. Heaven, and then by molding you as a person, then we can work our way to all the other things.
So you said in high school you didn't really care that much for religion. How did that change? You just went from not really being religious to being a teacher.
Yeah. I think part of that is a deeply religious experience on a senior retreat. But the other part of it is when you look back on it, I can thank my dad for pulling my lazy behind to mass every Sunday, right? Even dragging me some weekends, right? Because he kind of built up that foundation that when I finally had that experience, I was whoa, this is what I've been missing out on the whole time. now I can actually choose to devote myself to that. So I have to thank my parents for like really building that in the home. And they're not, by the way, my parents are not like daily rosary prayers. Like they're not daily mass goers. Sometimes they're not even weekly mass goers. But looking back, I can see how that culture that they built in the home really, even though I didn't care for it at the time, like it provided, a basis.
What about that culture that you think should be universal within all Catholic families?
I think a standard level of devotion, like praying with each other, like parents, I don't think should be afraid to pray with their kids, and listen, like, and for the parent to say, hey, at times I'm wrong, like, and recognize fault. All of us have fault. So, one of the cool things that a few of your classmates have started to do, like we've started to do night prayer every night on Zoom. It's open to anybody who wants to join. I'll just send them the link if they want. But that's created, this small community of people. And now, like, it started with me leading it because I was the one who knew how to do it. But now it's been taken over. Like, your classmates are leading this. So if we can start to instill that in the home, like, I think a lot of times it's going to come down to y'all, like, dragging your parents to mass, maybe. Like, because that's just how it happens, right? We get caught up in our busyness and we get caught up in, oh my gosh, I'm so tired today. What an exhausting week. Well, if we work together on that, like the family is the building block of society. So if we can start building up that beauty of the faith, like in the home, makes my job a lot easier here. Because then I can actually just give you the information, right? Like instead of trying to like pump you up every day. If that makes sense.
So do you see being a theology teacher as an accessory to what you have in the household?
Yeah. I mean, like, and that's really how it's determined. Like, I'm in addition to, like, I'm the part where, okay, if your kids have like questions or spiritual like concerns that you don't know how to answer, maybe I do because I have a little bit more background in that. But I can't teach them to pray. Right, because that's something that has to be done every day in like more intimate environments. When I've got 29 students in a classroom, it's kind of hard for me to connect with all of them. But you with your child, I mean, that's such an intimate bond to begin with, and what a blessing. So what a great place to start that.
How do you think someone, say you're a parent or a child that doesn't have that relationship, how do you think someone could possibly start that and maybe try to change what's already been set?
I don't have kids, so I can't really answer that like in its fullest sense. But I would think with any relationship, I can speak to kind of intimate friendship, if you will, an acknowledgement that we're both broken, and we've messed up toward each other, and that's how do we start mass? Everybody like I confess to Almighty God and to you, my brothers and sisters, that I have greatly sinned to God and to my brothers and sisters, right? So like. It's this recognition that this two-way street, like we're all broken and we all have sinned against each other and we all need that healing and reconciliation. And sometimes it doesn't come. Sometimes we just have to chalk it up to the Lord and let it happen. But I think we have more power than we believe we do at times. Like we have more God within us than we think we do.
So a lot of times, like I remember first semester this year, we read that book. Prayer, what's it called?
Yeah, Prayer for Beginners.
Prayer for Beginners. And you kind of just talked about, like, there's no way to pray, like, no certain way. You just do however it works for you. But what is some advice you would give to people who think their prayers are unheard or they just don't know how to really, they haven't figured out the right way to pray for themselves?
I always fall back on ritual prayer because it built a habit. So think about it this way, like, Jake, if you had 2 bad games in a row, would you just stop practicing? No, what would you do?
I'd practice harder.
You'd practice harder, right? Like you would add things in and you would take more time to make yourself better so that by the time you get to the game, right? Okay, I can see that my work's starting to pay off, right? When it comes to prayer, it's the same concept, right? Our souls need workouts. Like, so it starts by building a habit. So if you find yourself the only time you pray is, over the loudspeaker in the morning or at Mass on Sunday, start finding 10 minutes a day, right? And it doesn't even have to be consecutive 10 minutes, right? But 10 minutes every day at specific times where you're stopping and praying something, right? And you know what? Like, memorized prayer is good because you don't have to think about it, right? Like, you really don't have to, like, you don't have to be a saint immediately, right? That's a work. Like, that's a work in progress. You're not a college football player yet, right? You're not a starter on a college team. That's something you have to work toward, right? So in this, the spiritual life, it's a similar concept, and we work our whole lives toward that. But we have examples that we can look to, right? Like, saints are great examples of that. Mother Teresa, John Paul II, Pope Benedict now, right? He's 94, 95, and he's been silent since he retired, right? Like, what has he been doing? He's been praying. He's been getting back to that basic, right, of being quiet. I don't have to be heard all the time, right? Silence is key. I think that's one thing that our book said. Like, the book is called Prayer for Beginners because all of us are beginners, right? And silence is the first place to start with that. So, and I know that's hard for y'all, hard for any of us really, in today's society where it's just constant information and noise. The question is, how can you find that, right? Maybe that's the first step, is just, the first habit is to find silence and just sit there in it.
How did you find silence in your life? How do you get away from all the distractions every day?
Well, right before we recorded this podcast, I sat in the chapel for an hour. So, like, that was one thing. And it's specifically, like, finding people to pray for. I find that a really helpful tool because it's like, if I tell someone I'm going to pray for them and I don't, like, that makes me fill in the blank, right? Like, I'm a terrible friend, one, but two, like, I don't trust God enough to pray to him for them, right? So when I tell somebody I'm going to pray for them, I have to ask, like, a specific time. Like, if that person, you know, is having, you know, a meeting with someone, or if I know they're having a surgery at that time or something, I will pray for them at that time, because then that makes me break away from the distraction. If it's something that's more fluid, so like we have a family member who's going to probably die in the next few weeks. We have one who's being pulled off life support today. Like, that will kind of prompt me to habitually pray for them every day, at least at a certain time. I always try to pick times because we're people. Like, we need time, we need structure, right? We crave that. And prayer is rhythmic, right? It's not always just spur of the moment, let's just go, let's just say words, right? No, like, there's something to be said about a rhythm of it that kind of puts you in. Like, you work out at the same time every day, just about, right? Like, we need it.
0 period, Cody Johnson.
There you go, right? And speed school, like, you guys had speed school twice a week. You know, that's at a particular time. You have practice at a particular time. You have film at a particular time, right? We need that kind of schedule. And I think it does us a disservice when we just say, oh, no, prayer can be done whenever. That's great, it can. But like, if we're going to develop our bodies and minds according to a schedule, we also need to be sure about our soul, like, and working to allow the Lord to shape that and mold it.
What are some of the most profound presences of God you've ever seen in your life? Is there any experiences you can draw to that kind of drew you?
The first time I ever went to Eucharistic adoration was on senior retreat. So that was, I'd never experienced anything like it, and that's what spoke to me. And I'm one of those people who, like, even though I've had really profound religious experiences, I constantly doubt, because that's just the way my mind works. So I need confession a lot, because that's where, you know, I need to take advantage of that sacrament, because it's in our midst for us. Like, we are physical people. We need physical things. Like, God manifests himself physically to us. So when I think about the profound religious experiences I've had, a lot of them actually deal with other people. Like, you guys, like, being able to minister to you guys every single day is just nuts, right? Like, that to me, and when I forget that, I have to recall that and say, no, I'm super blessed to, like, be here with you guys and minister to you in this way. So there's a lot of different things personally, but generally speaking, there's so much more good that we're surrounded with. Like, God created the world good. He created us very good. So I think recognizing those blessings and being thankful every day, that's the first step in kind of opening yourself up to seeing the miraculous and seeing, you know, God very visibly manifested in the world.
feel like a lot of people have had moments where they
Like an epiphany.
just like know, like they can feel God with them. Not like that sounds cheesy, but I don't know. Like their prayers are answered, like right. I don't know how to explain it.
So like yeah, so like where you're so sure of
Like it had to
the
have
Spirit
been God.
speaking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me that happens often. I don't know how, like, and it's probably because there's a recognition of it. Like I'll admit, like I'm seeking that. So there's probably a recognition factor involved. I'm also, because I'm a skeptic at all times, like I have to like vet these things in my brain, right? And there, I mean, there's so many encounters of the miraculous that I see like on a daily basis. We tend to think of miracles only in kind of the scriptural context of like Jesus just like touching a leper and boom, right? All their disease is gone. Well, Jesus is not like physically, literally present, walking around among us, right? So the question becomes like, are there miracles taking place? Yes, there are. We see those wrought. Like, just look into the Middle East, y'all. Like, there's a lot of miracles happening in Africa on a daily basis because those typically follow the faith of the people. Like that's just almost every time I pray the rosary with an intention, the intentions either speak to, like they immediately text me without me telling them, or like the thing that I'm praying for them, like it starts to move. Like, so I cannot overemphasize the rosary enough. Like if that's, even if it's just one decade a day, do that. Because that, and don't just do it for Lent, do it for like now on out. Like keep doing it. It's really good.
People always say everything happens for a reason, like God doesn't make mistakes. How do you believe that?
I am anti-cliche. I mean, like, now, generally speaking, yes.
But, like, sometimes, like, when bad things happen to us, it's just frustrating. People say everything happens for a reason, like.
Yeah, sometimes I feel that statement doesn't leave room for mystery.
Yeah, but what do you think, like, when we're upset about something that's happened and angry at God, almost, like, what do you think we should do?
Be angry at God. Like, seriously, like, tell him, like, I am so mad at you right now. Like, why would you let this happen to me? Like, why would you let this happen to so-and-so? Because guess what? He can take it. And I think that he invites it, to be totally honest. Like, look at the posture of the cross, right? Is he fighting his way off? No, he's inviting it, right? He's inviting that. Like, and that to me that was one of the most freeing aspects of our faith, is that I can leave that up for mystery, right? Like I can leave that up for him to ultimately figure out, right? And then I can just be attentive to myself and to others at that point. So when I'm in a ministerial situation where, you know, somebody is clearly hurt, like I'm hurting because like we're social beings, like we hurt with each other, we sing with each other, we praise with each other, right? That allows me to sit and just be with them, right? And what I realized, you know, because my first year here is when Jim Maginot died. So like I was called, that was my first full year of teaching, like boom, you know, how do you minister? So I called a good friend of mine who's a priest. He and I went to college together, and he said, don't try to solve anything because it's not yours to solve. Just be, right? Just be present and you know what? Like, that's why when you asked earlier, like, who are some of my favorites of all time, right? Class 2018, like, has a lot of them because we ministered to each other. And, like, we're still doing that. Like, I just texted Megan Matei yesterday. Like, you know, like, and the cool thing is like, we keep speaking year after year about, you know, how we saw the Lord moving and all of that. Even though at the moment, it was total desert, total emptiness. Oh, where is Jesus for 40 days? In the desert, total emptiness, right? He invites it. So I think it comes down to a spirituality of uniting it to the cross and saying, okay, this makes no sense to me, and maybe there is no reason for it. Like, I need to accept that. Like, I think that's a more realistic approach. And honest to God, Like if you're suffering, like, do you want people to try to solve your issue immediately? No. What do you want? You want a shoulder to cry on. You want someone to give you a hug, right? Like, and you know what? That's what the Lord's doing from the cross. Like, he's inviting us to like look into his eyes. Like, leave this up to me. Trust in that. So it's really hard to get to that spot in a lot of cases. Like I envy people who can just chalk it up, because I'm such a rationalist that it's really hard for me to do, to just surrender that. But that, I mean, that's what the saints have done. So I kind of trust those people in that.
As a social Catholic, how do you, as a social being, like you said, how do you keep those Catholic values? How do you display those in everyday life to the people around you?
Joy. Like recognizing that, like, the if we want to say that the rules of the church, if you will, they're there. Just like when you're kids, right? Like, did your parents just let you run to the next neighborhood over all the time? Like, or even outside the city? Like, would your parents let you run to Greenwood? No, right? They gave you a parameter, right? Like a set parameter. Like, say, hey, you can have like all the joy in the world right here, right? Outside of that, there's danger that, you don't know of, right? And I see that, like, within this way of living that I'm choosing, right? Because it's not forced upon me. Like, I have to choose it because I have free will. So I'm choosing this way of living because, one, it orients me toward God. Two, orients me toward the good of another person, right? Like, I because I live this lifestyle, I respect everyone. I can disagree with them. Like, I can call you out because it's the intellectual side of things, but I respect you. I can become friends with you. Like, I have friends who don't live the Catholic lifestyle, dear friends, right? And none of them will say that I'm miserable for living out that lifestyle, right? Because, like, you recognize that the lifestyle the church calls us to is for our good, right? Like, it helps our relationship with God, it helps our relationship with others, and it helps our relationship with ourselves, and recognizing who we are. Ultimately, we are loved by God, and we deserve to receive and share that love with others.
So say someone has fallen from the faith. What do you think the best step is to the first step? What do you think the best first step is to recover and to recenter themselves back on the church?
If it's someone else, pray for them. One, like, that's the number one thing. Like, in your private prayer, pray for them and ask the Lord to guide them, like, just to protect them. We don't, and ask the Lord to, like, do His will, right? Chalk it up to Him, right? Secondly, if you are someone who does live the faith, like, and that person wants to invite that conversation at times, engage that, right? One thing that I don't do is press that upon people all the time. Like, they have to approach me in that sense. Like, I had a student just recently tell me that she was an atheist. And I was like, oh, really? Like, tell me more about that, right? And it's the invitation into that conversation, and not like, oh, here's a catechism, I'm going to throw it at your face, right? Like, that's not how we do it. Pope Francis is a great example of encountering people where they are, right? Because a lot of times there's woundedness that comes with it. Like, they've been wounded by people in the church in a lot of cases. And I have to apologize for that. I have to own it, because these are my brothers and sisters who I have greatly sinned against, right? So, invitation to that, it's not going to be an overnight in a lot of cases. Sometimes senior retreat is great, right? Because that reinvigorates a lot of people. But we don't all have senior retreats, and you guys won't have one next year. So what do you do the next time you're in a pit, right? Who are those people that you can then reach out to and say, hey, I need you to pray for me? Yeah. Never feel bad about asking people to pray for you, by the way. It's a totally selfless act, right? Because you're chalking it up to God.
You said that you had friends of other religions, so I'm guessing Islam and Judaism, or is there any other religion?
Yeah, my friend Mahdi, who I'll see tonight, he is Muslim. He's from Algeria. My friends Ash and Anupam, they're Hindi, from India. My cousin, who is my roommate, is an atheist. So, like, there's a lot of different movement. In my friend group, I have friends who are Christian but not Catholic. Some who are living open lifestyles that the church would say are not acceptable. Right? The question is, like, okay, how do you love these? Like, how do we work beyond? Like, how do we work within that, right? Because ultimately, like, there is a truth that I'm seeking to bring people toward, but do I do that with gentleness, or do I do that with, believe this right now? Well, St. Paul tells us to do it with gentleness, so I'm going to side with St. Paul on that one. So I enter into it because they're human beings first, right? We all share that. That's a starting point, and then we can work our way from there.
Do you see a similarity between the different religions? Do you see a similar joy that they present, a lot of your friends?
It's different, right? There certainly are a lot of similarities, right?
Do you think they're as passionate about their religions as a lot of...
I think most Muslims are more passionate than most Christians. I'll say that. In the sense that they're at least more dedicated to it. It's like my friend Mahdi, he prays 5 times a day. Like, on his prayer mat. Does the prayers 5 times a day. Eats halal, right? Like, so he only eats according to the Muslim dietary restrictions, right? He, during Ramadan, will fast from food and water from sun up to sundown. Like, it's a non-negotiable, right? So there's a dedication there that I kind of envy, right? And at the same time, like, I don't, that's not my spirituality. So, like, I need to be very careful about how I approach that. But, essentially, I have to believe that the church is the truth. It's the truest way, because Jesus told us that. And to me, there's a lot of evidence for that, which would be a whole nother thing, right? That's a whole separate kind of conversation. Like, what constitutes evidence? It's not just, scientific. We've only had the scientific method for 500 years. So, like, what constitutes evidence, right? And I think there's a ton of evidence that Catholicism is the truest form of that. But that's a separate conversation altogether. Maybe several classes.
So, what is some advice you would give to people listening, no matter what their religion, no matter where they are in their relationship with God or whatever they believe? What do you think could help anyone?
Start with silence every day. Start with thankfulness. Be grateful, no matter your circumstances. Don't try to escape suffering. Embrace it. And I think that, like, as you do that, you start to become more open to the truth that is the love of God. I think that's, and you become, like, you start to become that for others. Like, as Catholics, the best way I can put it is we have to put in the effort so that we can become tabernacles to other people, right? Like, we are really substantially carrying Christ into people's lives and hearts. And he's doing the work within us. So I think that's the best way I can put it in the Catholic sense. Get back into devotionals, like Rosary, Stations of the Cross, even the memorized stuff, right? It's fine. Relics are awesome. It's metal, man. The Catholic faith is metal as hell. It's great, right? So, like, go to adoration, go to Mass, like, pray Liturgy of the Hours. If you've never done it, reach out to me. Like, I'll pull you in. It's great. It's awesome. Read the Psalms. Like, study Scripture. Like, it's crazy. It's to me, like, we've made it harder than it needs to be. I think, like, no, like, we've got all this stuff. It's right here. It's been being done for 2,000 years. We're still around despite all the nonsense we've done. So,
last question for me. Do you think, like, as we grow up here at Cathedral and learn more about religion and faith and everything, do you think that strengthens our, like, family aspect here and our respect for our peers?
I think it does, because we start to see, like, what do we say about God? Like, God is 3 persons in one, right? Like, so he himself is a community. Like, he himself is interrelated, right? And makes us to be interrelated, right? Think about marriage, right? 2 becoming one with God, right? So there's constantly union that we're seeking. And I think that, like, as human beings, like, I think Cathedral is a great example of that, where we have multiple students from different socioeconomic, racial, cultural structures, right? And in that, like, we still manage to be here together. Because and honestly, like, that's the Holy Spirit uniting us. That's the Holy Spirit bonding us together, right? And uniting us to that community of God. So that every time we experience that, like, authentic love, that is this unity, right? This union of communion. Every time we experience that, we experience a glimpse of the love of God, right? We don't experience it in its totality, but, like, it's a sliver, like a splinter of God's love.
How do you tell others who may be skeptical about the morality of the Catholic Church with all of the bad stuff that's gone on over the years to still turn to the church and trust the church and know that the heart of the church is still there?
Right. To recognize that all human beings are broken, and that the church, though a divine institution, is run by humans. And if it's run by humans, it's bound to get into some nasty stuff here and there. Specifically, the most recent scandals of sexual abuse, that's we don't have a lot of faith and trust in our bishops and priests. Even though, like, I'd say the vast majority of our priests especially are just great men, holy men of God. But honestly, like, we just need more witnesses of accountability within the church. Like, I think lay people, like, we've made leaps and bounds since Vatican II, specifically in the last 15 years of, lay people who are informed on this stuff taking a leadership role. Like, just look at our hallway, right? Like, in our department, there's not a single clergy member. Brother Roberto's he's not clergy, right? He's a professed religious, but we're all, lay people who are choosing to do this. And recognizing that we are part of the ministry of the church. Like, we are prayed for. Like, we are part of the hierarchy as lay people. Like, because we're baptized, we have a priestly voice, we have a prophetic voice, we have a kingly voice, right? And we need to own our baptism. And in order to do that, like, we need to like start learning stuff, like, and take it seriously. Like, or because we let our faith just kind of become about lilies and fields and kumbaya good feelings, right? We got rid of all of our skepticism that we should have had. We should have kept, right? Like, and because we've been empowered by the church and by our baptism to be, voices, we should, but they should be intelligent, right? Like, we should know, like, yeah, bishops do have, scripture says that the bishop has authority over issues of faith and morals. Like, we have to trust that. But if our bishop is doing something wildly immoral, or our priests are doing something wildly immoral, or if another layperson is doing something wildly immoral, it's our responsibility to call that out because we're all baptized. So the church is divinely instituted and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Are some of the human constructed institutions probably going to crumble? Yes. Should they? Yes. Because then the Lord will sprout up new ones, right? And we have to trust that he's going to do that. So there's been entire religious orders shut down because of the sexual abuse scandal, right? Bishops deposed, priests locked up and defrocked, right? So we can see that the Spirit's working, but we have to get out of the Spirit's way and let it happen. Because sometimes you just need that fire to purge it. Like, how is gold refined? In fire, right? You quench a blade to make it harder. And in order to do that, you have to go through an incinerator, right? And sometimes Jesus himself says, like, he's going to cast out some of the chaff and it's going to burn, right? He's going to set it into the fire. Well, that's the reality. I know we don't like to accept the whole Jesus talking about hell stuff, but, like, that's real. Like, he's pretty clear about it. So recognizing that movement, right, that we have to let him be the judge, and we have to bring the understanding of him bringing justice into the world. So I don't cover up any of that stuff. That's all out in the open, and it needs to be rectified.
Well, on that note.
Yeah. Any, like, parting thoughts, questions, nonsense?
How would we reach you if we want to join the Theology and Philosophy Club?
Shoot me an email.
Or want to join nighttime prayer?
Shoot me an email. Find me in the hallway. When you find me in the hallway, I'll probably tell you to shoot me an email because I have a very spacey mind. I just forget stuff all the time. But yeah, we pray every night at 9 o'clock. Most nights at 9 o'clock, I should say. Monday through Friday. On Zoom. And we're gonna start praying morning prayer in the chapel Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have mass Wednesdays and Fridays. So, I mean, we're praying it up because I think we need it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Jake Lang.
I'm Brooke Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Candidate.
My pleasure.
You take it easy, Cathedral.